Discover the miraculous covenant of Jephthah. What did he offer God for divine victory? In the days when the judges ruled, in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the land of Israel stood in the shadow of despair. This was a time marked by turmoil, where the spiritual decay and moral confusion had gripped the hearts of the people. Among them was Jephthah, a valiant warrior of Gilead. Born of a harlot, he was the very embodiment of shame, cast out from his father's house and forced to find solace among the outcasts in the land. The bitterness of his rejection only fueled a fierce determination within him, a desire not to be defined by his lineage, but to rise above and prove his worth. As clouds of war gathered over Gilead with the Ammonites poised to attack, desperation seeped into the hearts of the elders who had once shunned him. They approached Jephthah, humbled and pleading for his leadership, acknowledging their forsaking of the covenant with Yahweh. The audacity of their request stung Jephthah's heart. The men who once cast him aside now looked to him as their savior. Torn between indignation and compassion, he had to weigh the fate of his people against the weight of their past wrongs. With resolve, Jephthah withdrew to the mountains, seeking the face of Yahweh in fervent prayer. His voice rose, trembling with passion, as he vowed, "If you deliver the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out from my house to meet me upon my return, I will offer it as a burnt offering." In his desperation and faith, he believed this promise would ensure divine favor. Yet, blindly, he bound himself in a solemn covenant, unaware of the heart-wrenching cost it would demand. The day of battle dawned with a cacophony of clashing swords and the cries of nations engaged in mortal combat. Jephthah's heart raced as he led his men into the fray, strength coursing through him not just from anger, but from the righteousness of their cause. The breath of God moved with them. Through fierce warfare, Yahweh granted them triumph and victory over the Ammonites, ringing with the sounds of triumph throughout the hills of Gilead. Yet as Jephthah rode homeward, his heart was heavy, the knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. What awaited him on the threshold of his dwelling? As he approached, a figure emerged from the shadows, radiant with elation. It was his only daughter, her laughter cascading like a river upon the barren landscape of his heart. The moment of joyous reunion was shattered by the crushing reality of his vow. In a heartbeat, the profound joy morphed into unbearable sorrow, for Jephthah was met with the cruel reality of his promise. What does faith demand of him now, in this moment of anguish? The air thickened with the weight of sacrificial love. Torn between the agony of his heart and the unyielding requirements of his vow to God, Jephthah stood at a crossroads. Would he honor his covenant even at the cost of his beloved child? The nuances of divine justice and human devotion clashed fiercely within him, illuminating the complexity of faith amidst the darkness. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the sun dipped below the Gilead hills, casting long shadows upon the ground, Jephthah's flame of determination flickered in the wind. What must one sacrifice to honor their covenant with God? A moment of profound silence enveloped him, revealing the sacred tension of faith intertwined with the tragic reality of loss. Questions echoed in the air, filling the space with both hope and despair, as the intricate tapestry of faith unfurled before him, leaving the haunting question, what is the true price of devotion? As the tears of Jephthah's daughter fell like rain, they mingled with the dust of the earth, creating a sacred ground where grief and reverence intertwined. Her joy had welcomed him home, yet it now heralded impending sorrow. She beheld the anguish etched upon her father's face, a revelation dawning upon her heart. "Father," she spoke softly, her voice trembling yet filled with unyielding strength, "you have honored the Lord with your devotion and promised your vow. Do as you have spoken." The resolve that sprang from her lips pierced through the fog of despair. Jephthah's heart was a tumultuous sea, torn between paternal love and divine commitment. "Alas, my child, how can I fulfill what my lips have uttered?" His voice was heavy, laced with the agony of impending loss. He recalled the moment he had invoked the Lord's favor, feeling as though the burden of his vow now bore down with an unbearable weight. "Do not shame my faith, Father. Rather, let me go and weep for my life, for the youth that I have not yet lived," she responded, her eyes shimmering with courage. "Permit me this time to mourn, for I shall not marry nor bear children, and thus, my legacy ends here." Jephthah nodded, moved deeply by her unwavering spirit. He granted her 2 months to wander the hills and lament, accompanied by her companions, the daughters of Israel. During this time, the wounds of his heart began to bleed anew, for the truth of his vow loomed larger. In the quiet solitude of the mountains, Jephthah poured out his soul before God, crying, "O Lord of hosts, you know my anguish and the bind of our covenant. I have chosen faithfulness above all with the cost of my flesh and blood. What now can be restored?" Yet, the heavens remained silent, echoing only the whispers of the wind that carried the scent of olive trees, the very trees that bore witness to his solemn pledge. On the final day of her mourning, they returned to the threshold of their dwelling, the skies heavy with the intent of fate. Jephthah built an altar, the stones cold and unyielding, just as his heart felt in that moment of visitation. He prepared his daughter, the sacrificial offering for the honor of his vow. As he knelt, a great heaviness came upon him, and he cried out to the Lord with all his might. "O God, may your will be done, and may this act serve as testimony to your sovereignty among your people." The flames rose higher, licking the air with sanctity and pain intertwined. In that moment, the whispers of heaven began to flow like a river. "Fear not, Jephthah," a voice resonated through the smoke of the offering, "for your daughter is not merely lost, but she shall be a beacon of remembrance. In her sacrifice, I shall carve a legacy of faithfulness within Israel that will transcend generations." Jephthah raised his eyes, filled with an inexplicable peace that surged through him, intertwining faith and sorrow. As the fire consumed the offering, he knew that his act wouldn't end in mere death but would echo throughout the hearts of his people as a testament to unwavering faith. Their tears mingled with the smoke, rising to the heavens, proclaiming a covenant anew, a covenant not merely of sacrifice but of divine purpose, for in the cascading echoes of this tragic vow, a greater revelation awaited within God's sovereign plan, one that would ripple through the ages. What new purposes would spring forth from this act of true devotion? As the flames danced and consumed the offering, a profound stillness enveloped the land. The smoke curled upward, an ethereal ascent that took with it the essence of grief cured by divine grace. Jephthah knelt, his heart torn yet fortified by that which had been revealed to him. He breathed deeply, knowing that the sacrifice of his daughter had not gone unnoticed. "Lord of hosts," he murmured, "you have breathed life into my anguish, transforming despair into a legacy before my eyes. Your words bring comfort amidst this storm. Teach me, O God, how to navigate the depths of my sorrow with the new understanding you have granted." The anguished shouts of the people who had rallied to Jephthah's cause echoed around him, their hearts intertwined with his. The men of Gilead watched in reverent silence, their hearts awash with awe and pity. They understood the weight of the promise made by their leader, yet marveled at the depth of his commitment. Fear gripped them, for in uncertainty they felt the tremors of fate. As the last light of fire mingled with the gathering night, Jephthah's daughter arose from the ashes, her countenance radiant and filled with grace. Not as an end but as an inception, she turned to the assembly, her voice reverberating with strength. "People of Israel, mourn not with sorrow but with strength, for my offering bears witness to the faithfulness of our God. I shall be remembered, and my spirit shall linger among you." Thus, the daughters of Israel went forth to adorn herself with song, marking a sacred pilgrimage not for grief, but for celebration of an eternal covenant, a disturbing truth overshadowed by the joy of devotion. Their hearts swelled with reverence, and in the hills a melody was birthed, echoing an indelible connection between heaven and earth. "In time to come, let this event be a festival unto the Lord," they declared. "For he has indeed taken what we presumed broken, and crafted it into a resplendent tapestry of redemption." Yet amidst the excitement, Jephthah was led away into the wilderness, driven by the urgency of the Spirit. "O God," he prayed, "what now remains of my sacrifice? Speak to me, for I feel the weight of a promise yet fulfilled." From the depths, a whisper emerged, tender yet mighty. Your sacrifice shall not merely be a memory etched in time but shall usher forth a generation of leaders steadfast in their covenant with me. The very earth trembled beneath Jephthah's feet as the Spirit revealed the depth of his purpose, weaving a thread of deliverance that would resonate in the ages to come. Days turned into weeks as Jephthah rallied the people, a new fervor igniting. Heed the cries of our God, for he has called us, he implored. This looming darkness shall not swallow us whole, for in the embrace of our hardship, he has prepared us for battle. The people of Gilead stirred, igniting with a fervor kindled by their memories of sacrifice. They amassed, gathering strength in unity, as a remnant of bruised hearts vowed to reclaim their land and honor the covenant forged in sacrifice. But as conflict neared, Jephthah found himself at the center of a greater spiritual warfare, battling not only against the enemies of Gilead but also within his soul. Great God, he cried, reveal to me the weapon with which to fight, make me a vessel of your will, for I am but a man, clung to a promise now borne upon wings of fire. And in that agonizing plea, a vision ignited his spirit, revealing an unexpected ally in the chaos. The voice of a prophet, a messenger filled with the light of divine purpose, awaited him beyond. As dawn broke over the horizon, the sun illuminated not just the fields of battle but also the unfolding mystery of God's sovereign plan, beckoning the faithful to a revelation yet hidden. Jephthah, steeled for the conflict, braced himself as the weight of history rested upon his shoulders. What deliverance awaited him, and how would the intertwining destinies prepare to reveal the fullness of God's might? The land held its breath, awaiting the unfolding of a promise sealed in the fires of sacrifice. As the veil of dawn lifted, Jephthah found himself on the precipice of destiny, surrounded by the warriors of Gilead, their eyes alight with resolve. The morning sun cast golden rays upon them, illuminating the fierce determination etched upon their faces. The air vibrated with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing the call to arms destined by the Almighty. Brothers and sisters. Jephthah called forth, tightening his grip on the staff of leadership, a symbol of his covenant with God. We stand at the crossroads of our fate. The enemy approaches like a flood, but our God is our stronghold and our shield. He has already declared our victory from the heavens. The assembly murmured, their spirits stirred by his words, yet lingering apprehension loomed like shadows over the hills. Could it be that the God who required such a heartfelt offering would truly grant them deliverance? Jephthah sensed their doubts and continued with fiery faith, remember the sacrifice that beckoned heaven to open. His plan now lies before us, yet we must act in unison and unwavering trust. And as Jephthah spoke, the Spirit unfolded visions within him, scenes of triumph mingled with despair, of swords raised against the foes of Israel. He has called me in my darkness, and so I shall be a beacon of light. You, too, must rise and fight, not by your strength alone but by the mighty hand of our God. His voice resonated with fervor, igniting the hearts of men who once trembled at the thought of war. They raised their swords in agreement, as a chorus of faith rose, spiraling into the heavens. For our people. For the land of promise, rang their cries, echoing through the valleys of Gilead. But in the depths of Jephthah's heart, the weight of his pledge lingered. O Lord, he murmured amidst the rising fervor, guide me now in this battle. Let my life serve as the vessel to pour forth your will. There, in the wilderness, a sudden stillness enveloped him, and he was met once again by the whisper of the divine. Trust in the coming signs, the voice instructed. For beyond this conflict lies a nation renewed, and in the ashes shall rise a deliverer. With this promise embedded within his spirit, Jephthah stood taller, emboldened by the knowledge that God would not abandon his people. They formed a battalion, warriors clad in crude armor, fierce and united. Clutching their weapons, the men set forth towards the hill where the enemy amassed, a multitude of faces grim and fierce, yet trembling beneath the divine authority present amongst God's chosen. As they neared the enemy's position, a low rumble echoed from the skies, a storm brewing overhead as if creation itself reacted to their steps of faith. The hearts of those gathered quickened, fear and hope danced together like restless flames. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for the very heart of their identity as God's people. Jephthah paused before the brink of battle, raising his voice above the roar of the wind. People of God, let us remember we do not fight alone. The God who led us from Egypt shall lead us in this hour. Let us call upon him. With that, he led his warriors in prayer, seeking divine favor. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation, a tangible reminder of the covenant they bore. Jephthah knelt, surrendering anew to the Lord's will, preparing himself for the impending clash. As the armies clashed, divine providence unfolded before them. The earth trembled, and light burst forth as if the heavens themselves descended to intervene. Jephthah's heart aligned with heaven's rhythm, beat for beat, while revelation surged through him, yet even amidst the battle, a deeper truth was taking root. The very fabric of God's sovereign plan was interwoven with their strife, drawing them closer to the fulfillment of promises far beyond this moment. As the dust rose, it was clear that the battle within was as fierce as that without. What revelation awaited them amidst the chaos of clashing swords? Would Jephthah understand the fullness of the charge given to him, and the legacy he was destined to forge? The skies echoed with the anticipation of the unfolding, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. As the echoes of clashing swords filled the air, and the dust swirled like a tempest around them, Jephthah's spirit surged with an unspeakable intensity. He plunged into the fray, each strike of his sword resonating with the prayers of his people. This was not merely a battle of flesh and blood but a confrontation between the living God and the dark forces that sought to extinguish his chosen ones. With each clash, Jephthah recalled the promise of God that had been spoken to him. In the ashes shall rise a deliverer. What did this mean? He fought, but deep in his heart, a yearning grew to understand the greater purpose of his struggle. Would this battle merely be a means to victory, or was it something more profound, a stepping stone to a divine revelation that would change the course of Israel's history? As hours passed like minutes, the sun climbed higher, casting a blinding light across the battlefield. Jephthah's warriors fought valiantly, emboldened by the presence of the Almighty that pressed upon them like a mantle of glory. Suddenly, a cry arose, louder than the clamor of battle, a voice of despair among the ranks of the Ammonites. Their God is with them. Flee! The enemy began to scatter, confusion sown by a divine hand. Jephthah seized the moment, rallying his men to pursue. Do not let them escape. The Lord has delivered them into our hands. He felt a surge of faith wash over him, spurring his legs to move faster, driven by a fervor to witness the deliverance promised. Yet, amidst the pursuit, an unsettling thought gnawed at him. The vow he had made echoed back through his mind like a distant whisper, reverberating against the clamor of victory. What if my desire to conquer leads to a greater sacrifice than I bargained for? Jephthah shuddered, for the weight of his vow rested heavily on his heart. O Lord, forgive me, for I am but a man. I seek your face now more than ever. The battle raged on, and one by one, the remnants of the enemy fell before the might of Israel. Jephthah raised his sword high in triumph, but his heart wrestled with the realization that they were not simply fighting for survival, but for something infinitely more precious. God's covenant with his people was at stake, and the stakes had never been higher. As the last of the Ammonite forces fled, Jephthah stood among his men, weary yet exhilarated. They had fought valiantly, and a great victory belonged to Israel this day. Yet within him lay a rumble of uncertainty, and he knew the battle was not solely won upon the field of conflict but also within the chambers of his heart. Oftentimes in the midst of triumph, God calls us to reflect on the cost of his victories. Jephthah looked up at the skies, a swirl of clouds shimmering with a light that bore witness to their labor. What does it mean to fulfill the vow I made to you, my Lord? He pondered aloud, seeking divine insight. As he turned to his warriors, he saw a flame of hope ignited within them. They had tasted victory, yet the victory had birthed a deeper longing for understanding. Jephthah raised his voice among his brethren, let us not hasten as men who have won a battle, but as a people seeking the heart of the one who leads us. We must go to Shiloh and seek his face. Unknown to him, this journey to Shiloh would uncover layers of God's sovereign plan, revealing a truth that would shape not only his destiny but the very future of Israel itself. However, in the quest for understanding, would Jephthah's heart align with heaven's purpose? The dusk began to settle like a shroud, and the promise of what lay ahead loomed ever larger. As twilight descended upon the land, casting ethereal hues across the mountains, Jephthah and his men began their pilgrimage to Shiloh, their spirits buoyed yet burdened. The victorious shouts of Israel resonated in their ears, but the weight of his vow pressed heavily upon Jephthah's soul. He felt the need to reconcile the sweetness of triumph with the solemnity of the promise he had vowed before the living God. Upon reaching Shiloh, the once tranquil atmosphere was punctuated by the fervent prayers of the people of Israel who sought divine guidance. Jephthah stepped forth, resolute yet anxious, and addressed the assembly. "Hear me, O people of God. The Lord has delivered our enemies into our hands, yet my heart is burdened by the vow I have made. We must seek his face to understand the fullness of what he desires from us." Whispers of concern rippled through the throng, for they recognized the gravity of his words. In the presence of the tabernacle, the very dwelling place of God among them, Jephthah approached the altar, his heart racing like the flurry of wings from a startled dove. "Lord of hosts," he cried, as he knelt in humility, "if it is your will, reveal to me the meaning of my vow. What sacrifice do you require? Grant me understanding, for not only my life hangs in the balance, but that of your chosen people." The wind stilled, and for a moment, all creation seemed to hold its breath as Jephthah lingered in expectant prayer. Clouds parted above, bathing the altar in divine light. He felt a stirring deep within him, a profound awareness of God's presence filling the air with a weight of sacred expectancy. As the moment stretched, he sensed the gentle whisper of the Spirit, compelling him to rise and seek the counsel of the priest, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, who stood nearby, observing in prayerful silence. "Great High Priest," Jephthah implored, "I have vowed to sacrifice the first thing that greets me upon my return, should the Lord grant us victory. Yet now, my heart is filled with dread. What would the Almighty have me do?" Phinehas, a man of bold faith, gazed deeply into Jephthah's eyes before answering, "Let us remember the character of God. In offerings, he desires mercy rather than sacrifice. Ask him for clarity upon your vow. God is faithful, and his heart bends toward mercy." Jephthah, sensing both the weight of wisdom and the call to seek understanding, steeled himself for the response of heaven. The air shimmered with the surge of insight, and as he prayed fervently, he realized the nature of his sacrifice was not merely about bloodshed but about the offering of his very life as a servant destined to fulfill God's purposes. The priest leaned closer, speaking with conviction, "If it is the will of the Lord, there is always room for redemption. Your vow can be fulfilled in a manner that glorifies God, rather than through unintended sorrow. Trust in his plan." Clarity began to unfold within Jephthah, nudging aside the fear that had gripped him. He recognized in that divine moment that God's design for Israel required faith-filled obedience, a willingness to offer his heart and leading rather than the life of another. As night deepened, Jephthah and the people gathered their hearts and voices in song, surrendering their fears and petitioning God for the path to reveal himself further. Within this gathering, they would see the unfolding of a promise greater than the sacrifice planned, pulling them closer into the heart of God's unfolding redemptive story. Thus, as they returned to Gilead, the whisper of divine revelation flickered like the stars above, drawing near a sacred mystery. What greater living sacrifice would emerge from the heart of a man seeking God's intentions? What promise lay enfolded within the vow that would forever alter God's tapestry of Israel? As dawn broke gently over the hills of Gilead, the air was filled with the sweet fragrance of dew-kissed blossoms and the soft songs of the morning birds. Jephthah awoke with a heart still heavy yet filled with a glimmer of divine hope. His spirit was aflame with the resolve to understand the meaning of his vow, and he gathered his people to seek the face of the Lord. "Come, O Israel!" he called, his voice ringing like a clarion amidst the stillness. "Let us remember the goodness of our God, who has shown us victory. Together, let us offer our hearts in supplication, for the Lord desires not the death of any creature but rather the turning of hearts toward him." With hearts aligned in unity, the men and women of Gilead assembled under the great tree at the edge of their village. There, they built an altar of stone, their hands working fervently as they used their very labor as an offering to the Lord. The stones, rough and unyielding, became symbols of their covenant heart, laid down in love and gratitude. Jephthah lifted his eyes to the heavens and, with the fervor of a prophet, lifted his voice in prayer. "O mighty God, you who know the hearts of men, reveal unto me the intent of my vow. I have set before you a promise, yet you know the anguish of my heart. Show me the path of obedience that aligns with your heart of mercy." A hush fell over the assembly as the wind stirred softly around them, sending a rustle through the leaves. Within that stillness, Jephthah felt a profound assurance, a peace that surged through his soul as if God himself had wrapped him in a heavenly embrace. "Phinehas," he called to the priest, who stood observing with reverent silence, "let us seek a sacrifice that brings honor to our Lord, a living testimony that we may fulfill my vow without sorrow." The priest stepped forward, a gleam of divine understanding illuminating his face. "What if, Jephthah," he proposed thoughtfully, "when you return home, the first to greet you is not a living creature, but instead, the very gift of your daughter, who bears life and future? Would she, in the heart of your offering, become a living testament unto God, transformed by your sacrifice of joy and service?" Jephthah's heart quickened as he contemplated the implications. "Surely, O priest. If my daughter were to greet me, I would ask this of the Lord, let her be a servant of the Most High, dedicating her life to proclaiming His glory among the people." Thus it was resolved in the hearts of the people, and the songs of worship ascended as the day continued. Yet, unbeknownst to them, deep in the folds of God's great tapestry, shadows danced and whispered of the trials that were to come. For God's ways are higher than man's, and His plans transcend human understanding. Days passed, and as Jephthah returned victorious from the battle, the joy of the people rang like a symphony across the land. As he approached his home, anticipation mingled with trepidation in his heart, a knot of emotion tightening as he prepared to fulfill his vow. Then he saw her the first to greet him. His beloved daughter, adorned in her vibrant garments, rushed to him with joy. The world around them seemed to pause as the weight of the vow unfolded like flowers at dusk. Jephthah's heart was torn between relief and heart-wrenching sorrow. "Oh my daughter!" he exclaimed, his voice breaking. "You have come to me as the fulfillment of my vow to the Lord." As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the earth, Jephthah wrestled with the divine mystery of what God was working through both his vow and the heart of his beloved child. The divine plan was unfolding. What might such obedience ripple into the fabric of their lives and the history of Israel? Little did they know, the true nature of sacrifice was yet to reveal itself, enveloping them in a promise not just for a moment but echoing through generations yet to come. What lessons of faith and divine purpose would emerge from their obedience, as they stepped into the uncharted waters of God's sovereign grace? As Jephthah beheld his daughter, the light of her joy clashing with the shadows of his heart, anguish gripped him anew. Her laughter rang sweet and innocent, a melodic echo of the life he had vowed to surrender. "Father," she said, running to him with open arms, "you have returned triumphant. The Lord has shown His favor upon you." "My beloved child," he uttered, his voice thick with emotion, "indeed, the Lord has given us victory, yet in my victory lies a weighty promise, a vow that I made unto God." Her countenance shifted as she perceived the depth of his words. "What is it that you have promised, O Father? If the Lord has given you this triumph, surely He would not require of you what is too great." Jephthah crushed the sorrow rising within and chose his words carefully, steeped in prayerful contemplation. "I vowed to offer up as a burnt offering the first thing that greeted me upon my return, and lo! It is you, my daughter, my precious treasure." A solemn hush fell over the land as the weight of his confession hung heavily in the air. Jephthah's daughter looked into his eyes, seeking understanding, and with a heart full of wisdom beyond her years, she responded, "Father, if I am to be the offering, let it be as the Lord wills. But grant me this favor before you fulfill your vow, allow me to wander the mountains for 2 months, that I might lament my maidenhood and consider the fate which awaits me." Her resolve struck Jephthah like a thunderclap, and he nodded slowly, surrendering to the current of God's will. "Go, my daughter," he breathed, "and may your heart be filled with courage. For the Lord's plans are not for harm but for a future filled with hope." And so it was that she departed, accompanied by her friends, whose tears intermingled with the cries of nature around them. For 2 months, they roamed the hills, her song of sorrow rising to the heavens as a fragrant offering, echoing the yearning of generations past who had sought after God's face in suffering. Upon her return, she approached him with resolute strength, embodying the faith that had grown in the crucible of her trial. "Father," she implored, "let us approach the altar, that the will of the Lord may be done in accordance with his sovereign purpose." With heavy hearts, Jephthah and his daughter drew near to the altar, and the assembly of the people gathered, witnessing the solemn moment of true sacrifice. The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced like memories across their faces, and whispers of strength gathered in the air. Jephthah could scarcely recall the tears shed nor the anguish understood, for a peace that surpasses all understanding filled the void within him. "O Lord," he cried, his hand stretching heavenward, "may this offering, this act of obedience, ascend to you as a testament of faithfulness. Accept my vow, and let it be fulfilled in your holy name." The altar blazed a brilliant flame, a symbol of devotion piercing the darkness of their sacrifice, reflecting the solemn truth of the heart, the intertwined fates of father and daughter woven together in the great tapestry of God's purpose. And it was known among the people, from that day forward, that the daughter of Jephthah would be remembered as one who, in humility, bore witness to the sovereignty of God. For in her sorrow lay the seeds of a greater story, a story that would resonate through the ages, a legacy of faith and sacrifice. Yet, as night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the vastness above, the people wondered, what can possibly emerge from this sacrifice, and what is the greater purpose God has in store for his people through these trials? The answer, cloaked in divine mystery, waited patiently at the horizon of God's unfolding plan, ready to reveal itself when hearts were most attuned to his voice. As day broke over the horizon, a palpable tension lingered in the hearts of the Israelites. The flickering flames of the altar had given way to the morning sun, yet the shadows of sorrow clung to the memories of Jephthah's lamentable vow. The elders of Gilead gathered in whispers, pondering the future of their nation. They had witnessed the valor of Jephthah in battle, yet now they beheld the weighty price of devotion he had paid. In that moment, a messenger arrived from the land of Ammon, where darkness had threatened Israel once more. The king of Ammon sent forth his demands, requiring the Israelites to surrender their lands, saying, "For what reason have you claimed the heritage of my people? Return to us what is rightfully ours, or face my wrath continuing for generations." Jephthah, kneeling in prayerful reflection, heard the rising clamor from his people. They sought his guidance once more, compelled by both fear and hope. "Jephthah," they cried, "our champion, arise again that we may be delivered. We have seen the hand of the Lord upon you. Once more, lead us against our foes." Haunted by the covenant he had made, Jephthah wrestled with the depths of his spirit. "O Lord," he uttered, "you have sealed our fate with sacrifice, but you are also the God who delivers. May your righteousness prevail in this agonizing hour." As he rose to speak to the crowd, hope flitted in their hearts, rekindled by his bold presence. "Hear me, children of Israel. Your plight is known. This king of Ammon aims to strip us of our identity as God's chosen people. We must gather our strength, for the Lord fights with us." The assembly rejoiced at his words. With rallying cries, they committed themselves anew to battle. "We will stand in fidelity to our God," they proclaimed. In the stillness that followed, Jephthah turned to his daughter's memory, reflecting on her courage as a guiding light. "For in sacrifice lies great obedience. If we bear witness to his glory, we shall not falter," he murmured. The day of battle arrived, and the Israelites gathered their arms, fortified by the Lord's promises of protection. Jephthah, filled with a righteous spirit, led them forth, charging towards the enemy with a heart aflame for his people and for the divine covenant that had been forged. As the clash of swords echoed across the mountains, Jephthah cried out to the Lord, seeking clarity and divine favor. "Remember your promises, O God. Let not our sacrifices be in vain, but rather let them kindle a fire of faith that floods our land with your justice." And suddenly, the earth trembled beneath their feet, as if the heavens responded to Jephthah's cry. The very air thickened with presence divine, a blinding light enveloped the battlefield, scattering the foes into a confusion that shattered their ranks. The Israelites, emboldened, pressed forward, fortified by the courage that only God could bestow. As victory was secured, Jephthah raised his voice in exultation, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not forsaken us." This day, may we remember not only the cost of sacrifice but the bounty of our redemption. Yet, within the depths of Jephthah's heart, a whisper lingered, unyielding. He knew his vow remained unfulfilled, and as he gazed upon the battlefield, he was struck by the weight of obedience. What divine purpose did the Lord intend to weave through this act of sacrifice? What mantle of legacy and covenant had begun to unfurl in the sacrifice of both father and daughter? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Israelites rejoiced, yet Jephthah pondered still. For, although victory had come, a greater mystery loomed on the horizon, waiting to be unveiled, a revelation that God was perhaps orchestrating an alliance with the unseen, revealing plans that wove through generations yet unimagined. As twilight descended upon Gilead, a sense of solemn reverence enveloped the people. Jephthah stood upon the threshold of his home, where fractured hopes mingled with the bittersweet triumph of victory. The cries of his people echoed in his heart, yet the weight of his vow, his beloved daughter's sacrifice, loomed heavy upon his soul. In this moment of profound conflict, he sought the face of God, longing for clarity amidst the intricate weave of destiny. "O Lord," Jephthah cried, his voice breaking through the silence of the evening, "you have delivered us, yet I stand burdened by a promise wrought in sorrow. Guide me in understanding your will, for my heart is torn between love and obedience." The heavens remained still, yet in the depths of his spirit, Jephthah felt the stirring of the divine. In that quietude came a whisper, gentle yet mighty. "My son," the voice resonated, "your sacrifice, born out of love, shall not go in vain. For I have not called you to destroy but to fulfill. A living testament of faith is what I desire." Jephthah's heart quickened with hope, understanding that the sacrifice had been a prelude to a greater purpose, one that transcended mere loss and bore the weight of divine promise. His daughter, a light amidst darkness, had faced the reality of their covenant with unwavering strength. Jephthah pictured her as she had wandered the hills, mourning not just her maidenhood, but transforming that grief into an identity wholly given to God. In her life, she had become a beacon of faithfulness, a living offering stitched into the fabric of their story. With renewed resolve, Jephthah gathered the people of Gilead at dawn, assembling them beneath the expansive skies. "Hear me, O Israel!" he proclaimed, his voice resounding like a clarion call. "The Lord has remembered us. The victory secured yesterday carries not just our triumph over foes but a renewal of covenant and identity." Hushed reverence fell over the crowd as Jephthah spoke. "Our God desires living sacrifices, not those of flesh, but of hearts committed to his will." I grasped for victory without understanding the essence of devotion. As tears glistened in the eyes of those gathered, he continued, "Let us honor my vow, not through despair but in dedicating our lives to serve our God, just as my daughter chose to serve him." Inspired by his words, a chorus arose, voices united in understanding. The people of Gilead pledged to become agents of God's love, carrying forth the legacy of faith that Jephthah's daughter sought. They envisioned a new covenant written not in sacrifices upon altars but in hearts affirmed and lives committed to proclaiming the goodness of Yahweh. In the years that followed, the legacy born from Jephthah's intricate vow flourished not as a tale of loss, but as one of renewal. Daughters across Israel took to the hills to honor the memory of a life offered in devotion, transforming lament into an anthem of hope. They created a festival, a remembrance not of sorrow, but of strength, celebrating the unwavering spirit that transcends darkness. Jephthah became a leader not only of battles fought against foes but also of hearts reclaimed in the embrace of the Almighty. Guided by the courage of his daughter, the stories of their sacrifice became testimonies woven into the very heart of Israel's history. As the sun set upon the land, bathing it in golden hues, Jephthah knelt and prayed. "O God, you have taken my anguish and molded it into a legacy of faith. May our people walk in the light of your purpose, forever bearing witness to the truth that in sacrifice lies not just loss but the birth of something profoundly transformative." Then came the stillness, a sacred silence filled with the presence of God, affirming the covenant made that day, not just of a father's vow fulfilled, but of a nation reborn in faith. As the stars twinkled above, whispering promises of a future bright and true, Jephthah rose with a heart blessed, surrounded by a people whose hearts now thrummed with a singular purpose to embrace the call of faith, redemption, and eternal hope. This devotion, the legacy of Jephthah and his daughter became the very essence of Israel's story, a reminder that from the depths of sacrifice springs forth the beauty of obedience to God's will, echoing across generations yet uncharted. O beloved community, let us not forget the power of faith woven through sacrifice. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that inspire and uplift the heart. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, inviting others to experience His transformative love. Share your reflections in the comments. How has this tale of Jephthah impacted your faith? And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear the undeniable truth of God's covenant love. Together, let us illuminate the path ahead.